Welcome back, everybody, to the First Strike Podcast. I am your host, and I go by the Marathon Don. Here in the First Strike Podcast, we strike first and we'll talk later. And I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for making this the fastest growing combat sports podcast in the world. Thanks to each and every one of you. We're over 15,000 subscribers strong. If you like combat, if you love sports, make sure you subscribe, like, and comment. Thanks to you guys, I'm able to do a podcast every single week. We release on Monday, and on this week's episodes, we're talking about Edgar Berlanga, the main event of Ring 3 this past weekend. It went down in New York. Edgar Berlanga in the main event against the undefeated Hamzah Sheeraz, and wow, what a fantastic event. It's the event that's taking the world by storm, because in the main event, there was, to me, it was one of the most devastating knockouts that we've seen in the sport of boxing. And I think that we have to analyze this event. We got to discuss the events leading up to the main event, what happened in the fight, and what's going to happen after the fight. So let's get right into it. Edgar Berlanga, before this particular fight, he only had one loss on his record to the pound-for-pound great Canelo Alvarez. If you think about Edgar Berlanga, he's someone that put New York City on his back. Put New York City on his back, put Puerto Rico on his back. He wasn't afraid of anybody, trying to get the biggest fights. He was in talks for fights with individuals like Caleb Plant. He was calling out everybody that was willing to fight him. He started his career off with a bang, with a long streak of first-round knockouts. And to go against someone like Hamza Shiraz that was just coming off a middleweight title shot, you know, this guy fought at 160 pounds against a very dangerous Carlos Adames for a middleweight championship. That just tells you the type of caliber of fighter that Berlanga is. He wasn't afraid. You know, if I was in that position, there's a lot of boxers that they take tons of tune-up fights. Think about it. You go up against one of the greatest in the world, Canelo Alvarez, where a lot of people didn't even give him a chance in that fight, right? This is a guy that hasn't won a world title. So before the Canelo fight, you know, everyone's saying like he doesn't deserve to be there. He hasn't earned his spot. He's never been a world champion. And here he is in the biggest fight of his life, fighting for the undisputed championship of the world. And he goes a distance with Canelo Alvarez after getting dropped against one of the biggest fighters, biggest punchers in the division, Canelo Alvarez. He rises back from the canvas and he delivers a fantastic fight against Canelo Alvarez. Easily after that, he could have spent 2 years taking tune-up fights, building back that win streak. But what does he does? He jumps right into the deep end against Hamzah Sheeraz. I mean, this is a guy, I mean, first of all, he was moving up in weight, but he was already way oversized, over 160. He's someone that was relatively unknown until the fight against Carlo Adames, but this is a dangerous, dangerous fighter. Dangerous. First of all, he's undefeated, and he also has over 18 knockouts. So his record was 21-0 and with 18 knockouts. So just do the math. This guy has over 80% knockout ratio, and Edgar Berlanga took that fight. And no matter which way you slice it, in that particular matchup, Edgar Berlanga was the A side. So he really didn't have to take on this fight. In fact, in his last fight, Edgar Berlanga, he had a tune-up fight. He fought a relative nobody and knocked him out in the first round. There's many fighters that after taking a loss against a fighter such as Canelo, they'll spend 1 or 2 years taking nothing but tune-up fights. We've seen it over and over and over again. They'll fight journeymen, pad out their record, get a few fights in a row, and then take on a young, hungry, undefeated challenger. But now Edgar Berlanga. Edgar Berlanga, keep your chin up. Keep your head up high, because on Saturday, and even for the last few years, you've put New York City on your back and you held it down, and there's nothing to be upset about. You have everything to be proud of. You put New York City on your back, you main evented in your city, you rose up to the occasion, and at the end of the day, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. You went out there with a gunslinger and you was trading shots. And I do think that in that fight, when I saw the fight several times, I would say at least like 4 or 5 times, I thought he was off to a fantastic start. It's funny because Edgar Berlanga was the guy fighting at 168 pounds, and Shiraz was the gentleman moving up in weight. So you would think that Edgar Berlanga would be the bigger fighter, but Shiraz was towering over him. This guy was massive. massive reach advantage, massive height advantage, and he just looked like the bigger man on Fight Night. Like, I was completely surprised because even in the weigh-ins, I didn't think that he had that big of a size advantage. So I have a few different perspectives on this fight. So let me give you a few. The first is that Edgar Berlanga, it's almost like a catch-22. Because he's so vocal and so brash, he has the attention of the boxing world. But because you're so vocal and so brash, when you lose, you get the opposite side of the coin. You get all the hatred and all the backlash. But the question is, if he wasn't so brash and so outspoken, would he have gotten the attention he's gotten? Would he have gotten the big fights that he did? I don't think so. There's a lot of fighters that are undefeated and have knockout strings, but because they don't have the personality, they don't get the attention that they may or may not deserve. So someone like Edgar Berlanga, for all the backlash he gets on being brash and being a larger-than-life character, I actually think that's good for boxing. I think they delivered one of the most entertaining press conferences I've seen in years. His backlash and his verbal wars with Oscar de la Hoya are legendary. That was hilarious. And I know deep down inside he has nothing but the utmost respect for the legendary Oscar de la Hoya. But at the end of the day, guess what? Oscar de la Hoya is also talking trash. So everything's fair in love and war. If Oscar de la Hoya is engaging, Berlanga is engaging, it created a moment for the fans, and it made this event must-watch TV. This past Saturday, everyone was tuned in to watch the main event of Edgar Berlanga, and that's because of his personality. Now, was that a distraction? Sometimes we've seen it when a lot of fighters, they get that big money fight, they're never the same again. Think about someone like Marcos Maidana, right? When he got those two fights with Floyd Mayweather, he retired from boxing at a young age, and he was a high-level fighter, right? Think about Munguia, right? Who also fought Canelo. He also recently got stopped after fighting Canelo. You know, there's something to be said about earning a tremendous amount of wealth in your sport. So, you know, was his motivation the same? Was his training the same? Did it give him some sort of illusion of confidence that may or may not should have been there? We will never know the answer to that. But one thing that I will say is that, you know, I'm very happy to see him back in action so soon after the Canelo fight and taking time off instead of taking time off. But I think it was just bad matchmaking. I think the better strategy would have been to take a year of tune-up fights, really build those highlight reels, really build that ring time, more experience against a variety of different styles before taking on an undefeated guy that literally just fought for the middleweight championship of the world. You know, maybe even he should have fought Caleb Plant. I think that would have been a better matchup. You know, someone is also a former champion, but is coming off a loss. So I think he could have captivated off that loss. So leading up to the fight, he looked to be in tremendous shape, but I just don't know where his head was at. You know, he's doing a lot of cool things because of his fame, hanging out with rappers, doing a lot of interviews, and I just don't know how much did that take away from his training. Some of my observations during the fight, I mean, he's always been brash and confident, but I do think that he was a little flat-footed. I think that the first 3 rounds, he had fantastic movement. He was working his jabs, and what I like about it was that he was in the pocket, but he was in and out. He wasn't staying there throughout the first 3 rounds. He was jabbing, trying to set up some looping hooks, and I thought that I would have loved to see him go for the body a little more, and I thought that for him being the smaller guy with the less reach, he actually looked better, and he was performing better on the outside than when they got in the inside. Typically, if you're fighting a bigger, longer, rangier fighter, you want to be in the inside because they have longer reach. They could hit you from a distance and keep you at the end of their punches, and you're not able to reach them with your punches. So ideally, if you're fighting a bigger guy, you want to get on the inside. But it actually seemed that Shiraz had the advantage on the inside. He just seemed to be more explosive. He had better shot selection, and he was just able to put his combinations in much slicker than Berlanga. I think Berlanga was doing much better behind the jab from the outside and sticking and moving in the pocket, land those combinations, and then go back on the outside. I felt like he had a good rhythm. The first round 1 through 3 were very, very competitive, borderline even. And it was in the 4th round where he really stood in the pocket too long, and he was trying to evade those looping hooks. But, you know, he was just moving that he got caught with a hook that basically spelled doom. And I think that he spent a little too much time in the pocket. If I was his corner, I would have told him to just stick and move, man. Stick and move. Even though you're fighting the razor guy, he had way more success on the outside. I think that his ego may have gotten to him. I think he's the type of fighter that when he gets hit, he wants to get it back. And sometimes that's a detriment to the fighter, because if you're not, if you're not in a position to get it back, you're gonna absorb a lot of damage, right? So against Shiraz, he just wasn't in a position. He wasn't moving his head. He was a little flat-footed. So when he got hit and he's trying to get it back, he's getting hit more. And eventually, those combinations started landing with significant accuracy, and he wasn't able to get any get back. After the first knockdown, I think that he should have clinched and move around. But after the first knockout, he went right to the same position, right in the pocket with his hands up, trying to trade, and he got knocked down again. And that second knockdown, I think that any other ref would have stopped the fight. And I'm glad to see they didn't, but he did absorb a tremendous amount of damage. I think it was great that they gave him another chance to get back in the fight. However, I think that, it would have been okay if they got stopped. I think that after the first knockdown, I would have liked to see him clinch, get his bearings, or move around and not jump right into the fire so soon. In the next round, I mean, first of all, he got saved by the bell, and then in the next round when he got stopped, you could just tell like his legs were gone. All it took was 2 shots, and right away he got knocked down and the ref stopped the fight. I think for Shiraz, there was a lot of questions about his last performance. In his last performance, he went up against Carlos Adames for the middleweight championship at 160, and he got a draw. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with getting a draw with a champion, but a lot of people are saying that he lost the fight. So I think he came out with something to prove, and right now his name and his marketability is at an all-time high. You came to the backyard of a very brash and very, very popular fighter, and you stopped him after he told you he was going to stop you in the first round. He looked poised, he looked dangerous, he looked fast. He was boxing very well from the outside with really good jabs and looping left hooks. And I think that what really surprised me the most was the way that he was trading in the pocket. I really liked his dirty boxing. In the clinch, he was just uppercutting Berlanga, looping hooks, and that devastating combo that he put on him. He just looked so sharp, so accurate and fast. And I think for him, the sky's the limit. I would really like to see him up against maybe, I would like to see him come back maybe somewhere like in September and just fight another star at 168. Obviously, they're talking about Benavidez already. They're talking about Canelo next year. But why not dust off one of the Charlo brothers or someone else that has a name in that division and match him up and keep building him as a star? I think he's a star with limitless potential, very professional, very humble and respectful guy, devastating style. He can box from the outside. He's a power puncher, and he has a high percentage of knockouts. So all the credit to him. Congratulations on that big win. For Edgar Berlanga, I think that you got to hang your head high. He's done tremendous with the tools and the resources that he's had. I do think that he's better suited more as a boxer. It's very possible that his chin might not be the same after that knockdown from Canelo. It was a vicious, snapping hook that put him completely down. And I think that, for the next years, first of all, take at least 6 months off, right? Repair, recover completely. And I think for the next year, you should really rebuild. I don't think Caleb Plant is a right fight right now, just because Caleb Plant is still also devastating punchers. And I think that Berlanga, he has to really reinvent himself. He has to get that footwork moving. I thought he had fantastic head movement for the first 3 rounds, but it seemed that once he wanted to trade and get into the brawling, his speed wasn't there. He got beaten to the punch, and I also thought that his head movement, it kind of went away a little bit the more he got hit. It almost seemed like he was so angry and desperate to get it back that he wasn't really concerned about what was coming until it was too late, until he got cracked so hard that he lost his equilibrium and went down. And I think that's not the right style. You're going to take way too much damage, and he has the IQ because he demonstrated in the first 3 rounds to pot shot. he has the IQ to pick and move. And I think that's going to be something that's going to favor him the most, because you know that you have the power. Let's get some body shots together, slow down your opponents, and then eventually put them away with your power. But there's no reason to be brawling in round 3 or 4. Who cares if the crowd is booing? Who cares if no one's cheering? At the end of the day, what you're looking for is to win. So I would like to see Edgar Berlanga, take a few months off, go back to the drawing board and build his career back up with 2 to 3 tune-up fights before taking on someone like a Caleb Plant. But there's nothing to be ashamed of. I think he did fantastic. He brought out the entire city, and for that moment, he had New York City on his back. Everyone came together to see him fight, and I think that Puerto Rico should be proud. You have someone that was willing to go out there, take on a tough challenge, and he wins or learns. And at the end of the day, I don't think that his story is done yet. So congratulations to both guys on a fantastic event. Besides that, great job by Ring 3, and of course His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh. I thought the presentation of the entire event was fantastic. It was a loaded card. In the co-main event, Zepeda lost to Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson defense is just on another level. We're talking about prime Floyd Mayweather. That Philly shell against the rope, it was just flawless. Every time Zepeda was gunning and going for it, throwing multiple punches, it just seemed like he couldn't land anything. Shakur Stevenson was more accurate. He survived a variety of flurries. He stood in the pocket. He snapped his head back with just amazing accuracy. He looked almost like a sniper out there. He was just so accurate with beautiful defense, great counters, and I think that right now Shakur Stevenson, the sky's the limit. His star is shining brighter than ever, and every detractor that had something to say about how he's boring or he's very defensive orientated, I think that he proved everyone wrong. I thought he boxed an excellent fight. He might have spent a little too much time against the ropes, but that's okay because Zepeda wasn't really landing anything. I think my biggest concern would have been from the judge's perspective, what that looks like when your back is against the rope for too long of a period. But other than that, I thought he did fantastic. I thought that for someone like Zepeda, the body shots would have been something that he would have gone for more, and that would have been the answer. But it just seemed like he was trying to overwhelm and outwork Shakur. But accuracy beats speed every single day. So it doesn't matter how much volume Zepeda was throwing, the accuracy of Shakur Stevenson is just unmatched. And every time he threw punches, he was able to snap Zepeda's head and snap his momentum right back. So I do think it was a fantastic fight by both fighters. I was thoroughly entertained. For someone like Shakur Stevenson, I mean, he's calling out Gervonta Davis, which would be a fantastic matchup. But why not take on someone like a Ryan Garcia or like a Rolly Romero? I think those are great fights to make. I think there's so many popular fighters in those weight classes that Shakur Stevenson against anybody is must-see TV. So I would like to see him fight another marketable fighter, someone that's popular. I would like to see them give him the opportunity, and I would like to see how far his star could go, because I think with the right opponents, he's in for some fantastic fights and very, very exciting matchmaking. Other than that, the rest of the card was amazing as well. It was an overall great production, and that's my analysis of Ring 3, the co-main event and the main event. Before we wrap up the episode, I do want to take a moment to talk a little bit about Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor 3, which happened on Friday on Netflix, and that was put on by MVP, which is doing an amazing job for women's boxing. It was an all-women's card taking place in MSG, and it was a trilogy between Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. In the trilogy, Amanda Serrano had something to prove. The first fight was heavily debated. It was a very close matchup, right? And the second fight, there was a lot of controversy because of the headbutt and the cut. So with this fight, even though the first 2 fights were so close and a lot of people thought Amanda Serrano won, I felt like all she had to do was add more fuel, more gas to her existing style. Like, if your existing style got you 90% of the way there, where so many people think that you won, why would you completely change your style? For some reason, she decided she wanted to outbox Katie Taylor from the outside and display this technical skill, where I thought that she was better suited brawling and forcing Katie Taylor into a fight like she did the first 2 fights. It was a very uneventful fight, and she ended up losing on the cards, and it's very sad because this is 100% the last time that they're going to fight. And now Katie Taylor goes 3-0 on the trilogy. Where they both go from here, I think no matter what, they're both stars, and they put women's boxing on another level by multiple main events, and also main eventing on Netflix. So no matter what, congratulations to both. And it's just it was a sad weekend for Puerto Rican fans, for Puerto Rican boxing fans, having two popular Puerto Rican fighters lose. I just think that no matter what, we got to give credit to anybody that steps in the ring. So just by stepping in the ring, it's a win for everybody. So how can you not be proud? So with that being said, I mean, there was also some UFC action. So big shout out to Derek Lewis, who got a knockout in the main event. And this upcoming Saturday, we're looking at Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier 3 for the BMF title. So look out for my predictions. I'm going to drop them most likely as a YouTube short between this episode and next episode. So look out for my prediction. Last time that I predicted UFC fights, I was 5-0 with my predictions. So out of the 5 fights that I predicted, I got all of them right. So definitely look out for that. But yeah, that's my analysis of Ring 3 and a little bit of Amanda Serrano. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I'm the Marathon Don here from the First Strike Podcast. We strike first, talk later. If you like combat sports, make sure you subscribe, you comment, and you like the video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I go by the Marathon Don, and I am out.